Hello and welcome back to the Level Up English podcast. I have an AMA episode for you today. You might be thinking, what is AMA? AMA? What is that? Well, you may have not heard the previous ones because the last time I did an episode like this was episode 84. 84. And now we're on like 226 or something like that. So it was a long time ago. AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. So this is where I go to my Instagram followers and I ask you to ask me questions. So I've got some questions from you guys, which I've asked before. I use Instagram because I think it's just the best way to get questions easily from a lot of people. So if you want to ask questions for future episodes, then follow me over there. My page is just called English with Michael, no spaces, so you find me there if you want to. And I've got some questions about English, some about travel, some personal questions, and things like that. And we'll see how many we can get to today. And if you like this kind of episode, let me know. I'm happy to do more. It's a bit more casual and I get to answer exactly what you want to hear, hopefully. So we can get into that. I think what I will be doing as well in the future is allowing the members to have kind of first priority questions. So if anyone asks a question on the members site, I will definitely answer theirs on a podcast. I think that could be a good thing to implement. So if you're interested in becoming a member and supporting the podcast as well, which helps me keep going and makes me very happy, then you can join us at levelupenglish.school and click on the members button at the top of the page. And there's a lot going on over there. We have group classes to practice your conversation skills with me. We have podcast transcripts, IELTS exam courses to help with your vocabulary, writing, grammar, pronunciation. What else have I missed? Reading, vocabulary, all that kind of... We've got lots over there. We've got the private podcast as well. It's honestly insane. And whenever I mention it to someone, they kind of go, wow, that is an insane deal. You get all of that stuff for just £10 a month, right? Which is cheaper than pretty much any English lesson you'll find online. This is more than just one English lesson. You're getting many hours of content every month. So I'm quite confident in the content and the price, and I've tried to make it to be affordable for as many people as I can. So if you're interested in joining our community and improving your English together, then once again, go to that link or click on the link in your podcast show notes. Let's get right into the questions today. So I had a question. I think I will read out the names, but not exactly, because I don't have permission to read your name online, but I can read maybe half of your name, if that makes sense. So I had one question from Jack, who wanted to know if I had faced any culture shocks before. And I definitely have. I think probably the biggest one... Actually, I think I've got two. So one big one is the first time I went to Asia. I travelled alone. I went to Asia for maybe 1 month and a half, 2 months, something like that. I went to like Japan and Hong Kong and places like that. And that was a huge culture shock for me because it was just so different to what I'm used to in England. And I think the big thing I remember was just the huge buildings, like seeing those big cities like Hong Kong was just incredible. I've never seen anything like it because even in Europe, we don't really have big cities like that. I guess it's changing now. We're getting more and more tall buildings. But certainly like 10 years ago, most of London was quite flat, right? It's only more recently we're getting much more tall buildings, many more tall buildings, which is changing how London looks. But that was a huge thing. It was the busyness of everything was as well was really, really quite shocking to me. Everything was so crowded and busy everywhere. And then more recently, this is an interesting one. When I went to the USA, that was a culture shock as well, because growing up, you know, American movies and things like that, it's such a big part of life. I think no matter where you are. But I saw so many American things in movies and TV shows and stuff like that on YouTube, for example. So I felt kind of like they were the same, you know. Maybe we have a different accent, but Americans and British, we're the same. But then the more I learn about America, the more I realize how different we are. We may have a common language, but besides that, there's so many differences between us, which I find really fascinating. And I always kind of had this opinion that I guess it's not that crazy. You know, when you look at America on the news, on TV, it just seems so American, which sounds very weird, but it's like everything is just bigger, crazier, more. Everything's more. Like the food portion sizes, the size of the cars and the roads and the houses, everything's bigger. Even people's kind of attitude. You learn in movies that people are much more open, people can be louder, people are more expressive, they show their emotions much more. And I kind of thought, it can't really be like that. They must be exaggerating, right? But when I went to the US last year, it really was exactly like I imagined, which was really good. I loved it so much. But it was kind of crazy, a big culture shock for me just to see how different people were there. That was kind of interesting. But anyway, let's go to another question. Someone asks, called RMSHF, Rumshuf, I'm going to say. They ask, should we study daily for 6 hours? Or can this be difficult? I think it's hard to say should in a language routine. I mean, it's hard to say should in many things because we're all different. So I'm not going to say you should study daily for 6 hours, but let's say you have 6 hours free time to study every day. If you really enjoy studying and you want to do it for 6 hours, I think that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I would just say for most people, that's going to seem like, I'm not going to say a waste of a day, but remember that well, at least in my view, a big reason to live is to enjoy life, right? It's not just to be improving and getting better, reaching some goal. I think you need to enjoy your life. So if that's really enjoyable, if you can look back after those 6 hours and feel like that was a day well spent, I feel so happy that I did that, then yeah, I think why not? You can go ahead and do that. I've never met anyone who's done that for 6 hours a day, but yeah, if you can, I think that's good. I mean, I wish I had that much time to study languages, honestly. But I know there's part of me that if I did have that much time, I wouldn't do it because I would see the sun shining in outside. I'd want to go out for a walk, enjoy nature, do something fun like that. I wouldn't want to be doing 6 hours. So I guess my advice, if you're considering studying for a longer time, whether that's 6 hours or 2 hours or whatever, is don't make it kind of an expectation. I would say in your mind, set yourself like a minimum goal. So say, I'm going to study for, here's a random number, 30 minutes every day. That's your minimum. If you study 30 minutes, then you have succeeded. Anything above that is just bonus time, is bonus study. So whatever time that is for you, try to set your goal quite low or at least achievable. So for me, honestly, right now, mine is really low. I tend to do about 10 minutes. I say if I study for 10 minutes a day, I have achieved my goal. Most days, I will do like 1 or 2 hours, much longer. But some days, we're tired, we're busy, 10 minutes is all we can do. We have to be nice to ourselves. So as long as you're not saying 6 hours is the minimum, I think that's fine, right? Does that make sense? Okay, I've got another question here from Rosenberg. Why can I not read that? Rosenbervarila, something like that. And they said, have you considered learning Spanish? I would love to hear you speak in my native language. And yes, sí. Hablo un poco español. not really. So, what I love to do is before I go to a country, I love to learn the language. And I think it was probably like 2016 or something. I was going to Spain with my friends, and I spent about 1 year learning Spanish. And I think, a lot of English people have some basic Spanish knowledge anyway. We learn it in school oftentimes. But I wanted to get good. So I had lessons on italki with a Spanish teacher. And I feel like I made some good progress. I learned quite a lot. And I feel like these days I can quite comfortably get the gist of what people are saying in Spanish. Like, if I hear some Spanish speakers, I can hear a couple words that kind of gives me an idea of what they're saying. Like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, mucha gente. Something like that. Which I think means many people, right? So, okay, they're talking about how crowded it is. Interesting. But I think part of that is just it being so similar to English. You also pick up some phrases, right? But yeah, I haven't learnt Spanish for a few years now, so I've forgotten most of it. But I'm always interested to learn more. So I can try to make you happy, and with the help of Google Translate, trataré de hablar español para hacerte feliz. Did you understand that? So as you can tell, I don't really speak Spanish. It's not very good, but I tried to say, I will speak Spanish to make you happy. Did that work? Yeah, thanks for the question. I had another question from Amar, who said, why don't you post daily routine videos for those who are not native speakers? Daily routine videos. If I understand you correctly, are you talking about routine videos like what I do in my day, like my morning routine, my evening routine, like that kind of stuff, as opposed to a language learning routine? I guess that's what you mean. And yeah, you said for those who are not native speakers, all of my content is for those who are not native speakers. I don't make content for native speakers, honestly. I kind of like that topic. I like the idea of like a routine. People can watch your daily routine, morning routine, things like that. The only reason I haven't done that before is because I feel it's a bit pretentious, right? Pretentious, I guess, is like feeling you're too important and you're really kind of special. You're the main character. Because sometimes people can make these daily routine videos and think like, oh, look at me, look at my routine. This is how I'm so successful. This is why I'm so perfect. And it kind of gives me a bit of an uncomfortable feeling. So it's a strange one because I do like watching those videos. It's interesting to see other people's routines. But yeah, I'm not sure. And there's the other aspect as well is just because it's in my routine doesn't mean it's going to be good for your routine. So people might think, oh, Michael teaches English and he has this language learning routine. Therefore, I must copy, which is not true. I think it's good to make your own routine, which is what I encourage people to do in my routines course at Level Up English. But I'll consider it. I will consider this for a future idea. However, if you looked at my routine today, it would be waking up very late and getting slowly, lazily getting out of bed. And yeah, it wasn't a pretty routine today. Let's see what else we could do. We got a question from Amin, who asked for a podcast topic on houses in the UK. And I guess I'll have to ask for some clarification, Amin, because I guess it could be a big topic. Like, it depends what you want to hear about there. But yeah, I think I will try to do that. Like, there's some good vocabulary we could look at with houses, whether you're renting or buying, some good things like that. Holiday homes, things like that too. I guess I could also talk about the housing situation in the UK. It's okay. The more I think about it, the more I think that could be a good topic. So I will add that to my list. Thank you very much. And we'll see if I can do that in the future. But as I mentioned before, I think I mentioned it in a private episode that I am not a fan of houses. It's just too much work for me. I don't. It's not for me. It's not for me. But anyway, one more here from Mr. Leah, something like that, who says, I really like your confidence in yourself. Do you mind to say how you improved it? Oh, that's amazing. One thing I will say, first of all, which I think we always have to keep in mind when we're looking at people online, any kind of internet personality, is it's always quite deceiving, because what you see on the video is maybe not what that person's like in real life. In fact, I have a funny story kind of related to that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you feel like I seem confident in these episodes. I don't know if you do, but maybe you do. And in real life, I can be much more awkward. I am improved, I'm getting better. But there was a case just yesterday. I went to get a coffee in Cafe Nero, in a cafe we have here. And I was kind of eavesdropping a bit. Eavesdropping means you're listening when you're not supposed to listen. You're listening to someone else's conversation. I was eavesdropping because there was a Japanese family in front of me. I was listening and like, oh, can I understand what they're saying? Just kind of for language practice, language curiosity. And then I was so focused on doing that when the staff, the guy said, what would you like to order? I was taken aback. Kind of means I wasn't prepared. So I really kind of awkwardly and in a really kind of shy way, like went like, oh, me order? Like it was really awkward, and the people in front of me were watching me be awkward as well. And I kind of thought at that moment, it's very unlikely, but what if those people, one of those people listened to my podcast and they were like, whoa, Michael's much more awkward in real life than he is on the podcast. But anyway, so that's one thing to keep in mind, that people online may seem different to how they are in real life. But I think when it comes to podcasting confidence, it's just been practice. I kind of am reluctant to recommend this, but if you did go back to my very first YouTube video on my main channel, it was many years ago. I was so awkward and shy, and it's really, really embarrassing. And the only reason I haven't made it private is because I think it's nice for people to see that progression. You can see where I started, where I am now. I may not be perfect, but at least I'm better than then. So if you want to get good at something, whatever it is, I think you have to just keep trying again and again and again. If you think about it, I've put so many hours, hundreds of hours into filming myself, recording myself, and I still have a lot of room to improve. I still have a ways to go, but just that repetition is the key to success. Whether that is in language learning, whether that's in talking to people, if you keep trying it, you keep failing, making mistakes, you will get better over time, right? You'll notice in my very first episodes, I used to cut them quite a lot because I would talk for 1 minute and go, what do I say now? And I'd have to think about it. These days, I can talk for, an hour and not have to cut anything sometimes. And it's much easier on the editing, but it's also a skill that takes time to learn, right? So that is my answer for that. I had a question from Hussein, who wants to know how he can upgrade his English language. And that's kind of what the whole podcast is about. I try to give advice on improving your English. One episode that I always recommend to people is episode 86. I think it's 86 because I recommend it so often that I remember the number. And I think it's called How to Start Learning English. And I may have to redo that episode one day when that one becomes a bit old. But in that episode, I gave some advice on what to do to kind of get started, make a routine, what to start with, what can you do? If you really have no idea, 86 might be a good one to start with. But yeah, I think it depends on the person. So listen to that one and heed my advice. Heed means follow my advice. So we've got a few here. Oh, that's a hard one to pronounce. Thuha, something like that. They wanted to ask how to improve pronunciation. I practiced the phonetic alphabet, But when I say a sentence, I make many mistakes. So that's a good one. I think, first of all, practicing the phonetic alphabet is so important. It doesn't necessarily improve your pronunciation, but what it does is it matches your kind of reading with the pronunciation. Because sometimes when you're reading, you may not know how to say something because it doesn't make sense. So once you learn the phonetic alphabet, you're able to see the consistencies in words, things like that. One example, I say because with a sound. Before I learnt the phonetic alphabet, I didn't know that was wrong. You know, we all have accents, so I'm not worried about it. But the correct way to say because is more like because, right? Because it's like a o sound. And I didn't know that until I looked at the phonetic alphabet and realized that symbol was not the same as what I'm saying, right? So that's an interesting, you do kind of learn, you might see some mistakes that you're making based on the phonetic alphabet. That's interesting. But in terms of improving your mistakes when you're speaking, if you never read, the phonetic alphabet may not help so much. So ideally, I think it could be a good idea to get some professional help. I'm not talking about a therapist, but I'm talking about a teacher. So try to find a teacher, even if it's just one lesson. Say to them, I want to really focus on all of my big pronunciation mistakes. And if there's something that I really am bad at, please write it down and let me know. Make sure the teacher is clear on that so they can help you in the lesson. Once you have an idea of what mistakes you're making, then you can kind of really put some effort in to fix them. So this is something I'm trying to do on Level Up English members. We have a pronunciation course where you can go to every single sound, every phoneme in English, and I teach you how to pronounce it, how to position your mouth. I give you some example words to practice, some sentences, and things like that. So you could use Level Up English, you could use another website, or even just some pronunciation website like forvo.com, a useful one, which is forvo.com. And yeah, try to practice with them. Make sure you're saying it right. You know, if you're really struggling with the TH sound, for example, like I do as a native speaker, then you can just really spend a lot of time watching videos online, trying to get your mouth position right, like put your tongue in the right position, keep practicing. And if you kind of focus on one sound at a time, it can be more manageable, right? You're trying to get that sound right. And whenever you say 3, 3, 3, really try to exaggerate it, make it really obvious. If you don't have access to a teacher, if that's not possible for you, then one thing you can do is perhaps just talk to people, and whenever they kind of say, oh, what did you say? What was that? If they have a difficulty understanding you, maybe that's the sound you need to focus on improving, right? So that could be another way to find out. The final way, which might be the easiest, is record your voice and compare it to a native speaker. So for example, if you have the transcript for these podcast episodes, read the transcript and record yourself speaking it out loud first, then listen to me say it and compare that with how you say it. And then you might notice more easily, oh, Michael said this word, but I said this word. Oh, that's different. And that's a good way to find out as well. And if you really work on those specific sounds, you can build them up piece by piece over time. But honestly, if you have made it to like an intermediate level and you're making the same mistake again and again, you probably will not fix that mistake without actively trying. You probably will have to actually make a really strong effort to fix the mistakes. They will not fix themselves on their own, usually. So I hope that helps. Have to be a bit proactive, but I know you can do it. I like this question again from Mr. Leah, who wanted to ask how I started teaching. Why did I start? And I won't answer too much here because this is episode 1 of my private podcast. So if you want to find out more, a detailed kind of history of why I started teaching English, then become a member, listen to the private podcast, and you can find out there. Now, I go into a lot of detail there on why I started, but very basically, I'll just say here very quickly that I was kind of at a dead end in my life. It was only I was only about 21, but I had many jobs before that age. I had about 16 jobs before the age of 21, and I just didn't know what to do with my life. So I quit my job at the time. I quit my full-time job with decent pay, and I just went traveling. That's when I went to Asia for the first time, and I really had a good think about what I wanted to do. And a big interest of mine was language learning, languages. English was the only language I really knew at the time. So I decided to focus on a career teaching English. And the reason why I didn't go to like a school is because when I was at school, I hated school. I didn't want anything to do with schools. And my motivation has always been to make English more fun. At least in my school, language learning was really boring, and it probably ruined a lot of people's motivation to learn. So my goal has always been to make language learning fun and not like it is in most schools. But I hope they can improve one day. So I didn't quite get to all my questions, but I think what I will do today is continue these questions on the private podcast. Right, that would be a good idea. So if you want to hear me answering more questions I didn't get to, then you'll have to become a member. Members, you will see that on Friday, this Friday on the private podcast. So thank you if you do sign up over there. I've got 2 podcast reviews today, both from Saudi Arabia, that I want to say thank you to. So one from Sarah, or I would say Sarah, but I think it's going to be Sarah, something like that, who says, "Thank you for your effort. Your podcasts are just amazing. I appreciate it." And it sounds like they're shouting because it's all in capital letters. But thank you very much. And I got one more here from Zohair Said, who says, "Hi Michael, I'm listening from Palestine. I love your podcast and learned numerous vocabularies and skills from you. Could you please talk about the difference between American English and British English? Thanks in advance." Yes, I can do that. I have done a little bit before, but yeah, I guess I could do a bigger episode on that and perhaps get some American guest on to help. That could be fun. So thank you for the suggestion. It said you're from Saudi Arabia, but I guess you're from Palestine, so that's my mistake. But thank you very much, and I will see what I can do. I have a quote here about asking questions, because this is the question episode after all. It's a long one though, so bear with me. This is from Albert Einstein, many quotes from him. He said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery each day." That's a really nice one. Some hard words in there, but basically, never stop questioning, always be curious. That's a nice quote to end on. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. And I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.